we are reconvening at 7:06. We did have a session at a stormwater site off of Benoit Lane with a presentation, and no motions or actions were taken. It was purely informational. So next on the agenda would be the stormwater, well, actually,
Minutes and...
well, you know, I'm going to public, yeah, let's do the minutes first. Do the minutes first. So there are minutes available from our September 2nd, 2025 meeting. Is there a motion?
Move to approve subject to modification.
Is there a second?
Second.
Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Hearing no modifications, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No nays. Minutes are adopted. Actually, next, I'm going to mix it up a little bit, unless there's an objection, but we can go to public comment first. Do you want to?
The only thing is just it was scheduled for 7,
Yeah, okay.
18. Do you want me to do the opioid?
No, let's, oh, sorry, I'm just a creature of habit. Let's go to the stormwater, or, yeah, go do the opioid.
And can I do a couple of liquor?
Sure.
Alright. So the state of Vermont is participating in a new national secondary manufacturer settlements agreement. This one is reached with 8 opioids manufacturers, and I listed those in the manager's report. Williston's a subdivision of this, and to be considered for initial participation calculations and payment eligibility, we have to elect to participate by October 8th, 2025. So if you'd like to participate, there's a motion suggested in your materials.
Questions for Aaron?
So what exactly is the participation form, the combined participation form? It just says that we're interested and doesn't obligate us to anything, or?
Well, it would make us eligible for payment, so that's why I wanted to bring it forward to you. I will share with you that the state has checked in a couple times to make sure we're signing on for it, because their participation is subject to this amount of subdivisions that they have, and such is my understanding.
But it doesn't, but signing this thing says, yeah, you can give us some money and we'll figure out how to spend it. Doesn't say.
Yes, it's the same.
Matching or anything.
No,
it's just-
it has no financial commitments on our end. That
Right.
way, yeah.
Other questions for Aaron? No? Any motion to be in order?
I move to authorize the acting town manager to sign a combined participation form on behalf of the town to participate as a subdivision in the secondary manufacturer settlements and be eligible for any related payments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. Motion carries.
Okay, I have 3 requests to cater permit applications. 2 of them are related to the Red Barn Festival that you approved the temporary event permit for at the last meeting. They submitted 1 request for each day, and it's a 2-day event. So it's for foam brewers, October 3rd, 2025, and October 4th, 2025.
Questions for Aaron? If not, a motion would be in order.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No nays, the motion carries.
We have a separate one. This one is from Farmhouse Williston LLC. It's a request to do a very small event at, let's see, Town Place Suites by Marriott. So they don't have a liquor license, which is why for this small event, they're submitting this request to cater permit. There's no concerns.
Questions for Aaron? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 There are no nays, the motion carries.
Doing great, Aaron.
Yeah.
These meetings move right along.
Oh, yeah. efficient.
could learn a thing.
Oh, no. He taught me well.
So with that, because all times are approximate, I think I will go to public comment. Is there this is a moment where anybody in the audience can make a comment to the board. It does not have to be on anything in the agenda. If it is something on the agenda, you may wish to wait until that agenda item is called, but you don't have to. If you do speak, if you could limit your time you're speaking to 2 minutes. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to make a public comment? Seeing no one. Aaron, is there anybody online?
There's one person online, if they could chat, if they, or just shoot me a chat message if they would like to speak. I did give them access if that's easier as well.
So,
I'm not seeing any action.
okay, we can come back if
Okay.
communicates. So that would bring us to the Stormwater project update. Lisa. Lisa has already successfully conducted a field trip earlier today for the board.
No one was hurt, no one got lost,
That's right.
Nobody fell out of the truck?
no one fell out.
I had to run for it.
I'm just going to try to share my screen so that it's on Zoom as well. Just saying. There's so many windows open. Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Were you here?
I don't know how to get rid of that window.
I don't know either.
Maybe if I... Oh, I found it. I'm not sure if this will work on the first try.
That will be of no help.
Okay, I'm just gonna see if clicking through works okay. Yeah, there's just a little delay. Okay. So, my name is Lisa Giacchetti. I'm the Stormwater Coordinator. I'm going to be giving a quick presentation that'll give an overview of the Stormwater program, starting from the basics and then moving on to current projects. And some of it will be a little bit a review from what we talked about in the field. But for those of you who are just listening now, it should cover everything. Okay, so the term stormwater refers to rain and snow melt flowing over land. There is more stormwater in developed areas because roofs and pavement prevent rainwater from soaking into the ground. So this little infographic shows how we get more runoff in developed neighborhoods because water can't follow its natural cycles. And in the process of flowing across the roofs and pavement and mowed grass, it picks up pollutants, causes erosion, and leads to more water hitting our streams quickly during heavy storms. And then here's a little outline of how stormwater permitting works in Vermont. It all kind of dates back to the Clean Water Act, which created EPA regulations for water quality. Vermont Agency of Natural Resources has the delegated authority to administer water quality permits in Vermont. And so the town of Williston has a municipal separate storm sewer system permit, or an MS4 permit, that's administered by Vermont ANR. And I kind of think of our MS4 permit in 4 categories, or like 4 pillars of how they're regulating stormwater in Williston. The first is our stormwater management plan, which has 6 minimum control measures, and I'll go into more details on all these in a minute. But so the first is stormwater management plan. The second is the municipal roads general permit, which is part of our MS4 permit, and that covers the road erosion inventory for all the town roads. Then we have our phosphorus control plan, which exists because we have phosphorus total maximum daily loads for the Winooski River. And then we have our flow restoration plan because the Allen Brook is stormwater impaired. So we'll dive into a little bit more about our 6 minimum control measures in our stormwater management plan. The first 2 are public education and outreach and public participation, and both are part of our partnership with the other Chittenden County MS4s. So the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission organizes that, and the Winooski Natural Resource Conservation District and Pluck Design Studios cover a lot of our education and outreach and public participation through kind of social media campaigns and local events that they organize with the town. So we did have one rain barrel workshop earlier this year. And we also do, outside of that partnership, we participate in the Blue program with the Lake Champlain Sea Grant at the UVM Extension. And we've had a lot of interest in that over the past 2 years. We've been doing about 20 site visits per year, and a couple of projects have gone through to get rebates each year so far.
Can I ask, what is the Blue project again?
The Blue Project does residential site visits. So the 20 site assessments we've done have been to homeowners in Williston, and that's 20 per year. And then we give them, or UVM, the contractors there, give them a write-up or a report of stormwater management on their property with recommendations for what they can implement that would be considered green stormwater management. And if they do that following the specifications, then they might be eligible for a rebate from the town.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Is public education, outreach, and public participation, is that just you, like, making this stuff up, or is there like a regional group that does?
So all 6 of these minimum control measures come from the EPA telling MS4s what to do, and then for our publication or public education outreach and public participation efforts, we organize it with all the other Chittenden County MS4s through CCRPC. So we're all doing pretty similar things on different levels.
Makes a lot more sense than you all doing it separately.
Yes, yeah, luckily we do work together. It helps a lot. And then minimum control measure number 3 is illicit discharge detection and elimination. So for that, I go out and inspect our stormwater outfalls. So when you think of we would call it a closed drainage road where there's a storm drain, wherever that flows into the nearby stream, I go in and inspect that once within the 5-year permit cycle. And I look for signs of pollution or erosion or failing infrastructure. And then number 4 and 5 are inspecting construction sites during construction and post-construction. And during construction, I'm looking to see that they're not letting any polluted runoff flow off the site, because when you have disturbed earth, there's a lot of sediment there that can flow freely. And then post-construction, I'm looking to see that they've properly stabilized that disturbed earth. And number 6 is pollution prevention and good housekeeping in municipal operations. This includes a lot of things like cleaning our catch basins, also on our 5-year permit cycle, street sweeping, which we do in the spring and in the fall. It also covers our staff trainings, keeping the public works job clean, proper storage of road salt and other chemicals, and essentially everything so that we're not contributing to any stormwater pollution.
When you mentioned 20 residential site visits per year, I think about Williston as, it's got old developments, new developments, and there's also a rural aspect of Williston. But how do you pick these sites? What sites do you pick?
Anyone can sign up, and then we'll give them custom recommendations based on their site. So if they have a smaller yard that, and their driveway takes up a lot of it, we can give them a recommendation that makes sense for them. If they have a big yard and they can implement something that takes up a lot of space, they don't mind giving up some of their mowed lawn, then we'll make recommendations based on that.
And this is based probably mostly in the defined area of Williston, the growth area?
We've actually had a few people off Butternut and Governor Chittenden sign up, so really anyone who's interested in making sure they're not contributing to stormwater pollution can sign up, and it's been really fun to visit and meet the homeowners too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next section of our MS4 permit is a municipal roads general permit. All towns in Vermont have this permit, but for the MS4s, it's under the umbrella of our MS4 permit, so this is still part of the same permit. And it covers all the hydrologically connected town roads, which just means town roads that are close to a water body. And we're looking for, when we do the road erosion inventory, which we also do through CCRPC, we just look for erosion in the road, next to the road, or in the roadside ditch. We have a couple of annual state grants that help us implement work to make sure all of our segments are up to the state standards. And that We can do ditch work, culvert replacements, adding gravel to redo the crown on the road, removing grader berms and things like that. And this map is our current road erosion inventory. So I'll just explain because you can't read the legend. The bright green are hydrologically connected open drainage roads, so roads that have ditches on the side that are in compliance. And then we have a few segments that are orange that do not meet, or purple, and those also do not meet standards. And those are areas where we can use grant funds to work to bring them into compliance. And also on the MS4 permit cycle.
Okay, it's probably a dumb question, but how can something be not connected, not highway, and also fully meets? I'm looking at this road I didn't know existed. It looks like it's Redmond Road connecting over to North Williston, and I don't, at the very top, that book. I mean, just say it's like, it's got little pieces of it.
Yeah, each segment is supposed to be about 100 meters. I have noticed sometimes they categorize something as not hydrologically connected, but it's uphill of a hydrologically connected segment, so all the runoff is going to the same place. So we do have the ability to recategorize them as hydrologically connected and then use grant funds there if it makes sense for treating the stormwater. Any other questions? Okay. But yeah, essentially all the bright green means that we're mostly in compliance, and 2 of the orange spots we've actually already done work on this past fiscal year.
So maybe I'm just not like reading this right. So let's use, so why is a road green and then gray?
Different segments might be considered not hydrologically connected on the same road based on its distance from a water body. Does that answer?
Yes.
Yeah, and again, I think they did it all based on modeling, so when you're there in person, sometimes I have a different opinion, but yeah. So the next 2 parts of the MS4 permit are 2 plans that were introduced because of impaired water bodies in Williston. We have the phosphorus pollution, which is actually based on Lake Champlain's total maximum daily load, and we're part of the Winooski Basin. So we're trying to reduce phosphorus pollution flowing into the Winooski River. And our role in that is reducing the phosphorus running off of town roads. So we have our phosphorus control plan for that. And then the flow restoration is based on stream segments that are considered stormwater impaired, which is true for the Allen Brook. And so the goal for that is to reduce flows to it, which basically just means during a big storm, how big of a rush of water are you getting into it? And we've made a lot of progress on both of these already. For the phosphorus, in our phosphorus control plan, we had what they called a remaining required reduction of 13.3 kilograms per year. And the Meadow Ridge project that we looked at today, once that is retrofitted, it will accomplish 11.26 kilograms per year. So that'll get us 84.6% of the way there. And that goal is due in 2036. So we're making good progress in compliance right now, and to reach our goal, there are a few non-structural practices we can continue, like if we increase street sweeping to 4 times in the fall, which we're doing, or trying to start this year. That will get us some more phosphorus credits, and then there's other structural projects like what we're going to work on today, and those plans we have in the design phase right now. Then for our flow restoration plan, this progress is based on the number of projects that have been completed. So there's one neighborhood still working through the process of being incorporated into the MS4, which I mentioned earlier, but I'll recap. This was the expired residential permit program, so expired stormwater permits in the Allen Brook watershed had the opportunity to bring their neighborhood stormwater system up to modern standards, and then the town could take it over to work towards our phosphorus reduction, or our flow restoration goals. And now there's one neighborhood project still remaining to be completed and only one other unfinished project in this plan. And that is also in the design phase right now, and that's for stormwater facilities in the town hall fields. So just to recap, we, under our MS4 permit, have the stormwater management plan, the municipal roads general permit, the phosphorus control plan, and the flow restoration plan. Any other questions before I move on from those 4 categories? Okay. So then a quick financial summary. These are numbers from towards the end of fiscal year 25, because that's what I had easy access to pull from. So our total revenues by the end of May 2025, we had received 95% of our anticipated total revenues and 86.75% of our user receipts, which refers to the stormwater utility fees. And then for total expenditures, we'd spent 97.77%, and specifically calling out a couple of categories of interest here. We have outside services, we had spent 64.92%, and for maintenance operations, which includes a lot of the stormwater work I'd mentioned earlier, that's 66.3% that we had spent by the end of May.
When you budget to spend less than the revenues, is that because we're saving for a bigger project, or?
In this case, I don't think so.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
So saying when you budget to spend less than your user receipts, than your revenue, are you doing that on purpose so that you can save for a project or save for a rainy day, so to speak? Or
Well, no, since it's a utility fund, which I know you know, any money that's left over just goes into the surplus fund, whatever we want to call that, and we can use that money for projects or whatever. But we don't do it on purpose. We set the budget and try to. So what I tell everybody every year is, we get to zero, that's fine. As long as we don't go below zero, I'm all good. So if we end up 10% left,
The audience that's online cannot hear Bruce.
That's a good point. Yep, Bruce, we have that.
I could not hear Shirley because she's talking over here, and I tried to do it online. And
We have a standing mic over there.
we're just speaking to a mic.
That's a good reminder. Thank you.
Is your microphone on?
Yeah, that one, we tapped that, yeah.
Oh, is it not now?
Now it's on.
okay, so what I was saying is it's a revenue fund, so we don't purposely not try to spend all the money. And if money is left at the end of the year, it goes into the surplus funds, which we can then use to do projects or whatever. But it's never intentional. I never say don't spend the money. Once again, with all of our, whether it's water, sewer, stormwater, general fund budgets, if we end up at zero, I'm happy. If we have 10% left, that's okay too, as long as we're not on the other side of zero. That's, really the biggest thing.
I mean, you're not wrong, but our fees could be set too high if you're.
Our fees are nowhere near set too high for
Okay, well, then I hope you
stormwater.
have really good plans to what you got to do with the surplus to make things better for the town.
We have big plans, and if we hadn't gotten this ARPA money,
Yeah.
then we would have been spending a lot more of that money right now too. But we can't plan on that all the time. That
Right,
was
yeah.
so.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on this slide? Okay. So now I'm going to talk about other operating permits to give you some context or what's going on in the stormwater world in Williston and Vermont in general. So the MS4 is one type of operating permit. It just means that it covers a system that's currently in operation, not a system that's under construction. So for the 9050 permits, these are for developments, and for developments that include town roads, the state is now requiring the town to be a co-permittee on applications for the ones that have town roads as part of the development. So these 9050 permits, they are also working towards phosphorus reduction goals and other water quality goals based on whatever watershed they're in. So there's phosphorus reduction goals for Lake Champlain and Lake Memphremagog and other stormwater impaired waters. Within the 9050 permits, there are sites known as 3-acre sites, which you may have heard of. Those are just sites that have 3 acres or more of impervious surface, and they're required to do engineering feasibility analyses and possibly implement new stormwater systems to meet phosphorus reduction goals for their development. So for the co-permittee situation that the state is requesting or requiring, we just have a standard stormwater maintenance agreement with these developments to clarify the different responsibilities between who's taking care of what infrastructure. So the town will continue to take care of the stormwater infrastructure around the town road within the right-of-way. And then any infrastructure on private property is the responsibility of the private property owners, which might be an HOA or other neighborhood association, or could be also commercial or industrial development. And the town roads have phosphorus reduction goals from the state under this permit as well as under our MS4 permit, so there's a little bit of redundancy there. To give you a sense of scale, there are about 700 3-acre sites in Vermont, and in 64 of these sites, these are rough numbers, are in Williston. The expected average cost of compliance is roughly $70,000 per acre of impervious. And keep in mind, each site has at least 3 acres of impervious. Some neighborhoods are facing costs upwards of $10,000 per household, and only a small amount of state funding will be offered to support these sites each year from the state. So that's just some context for what's going on with our co-permittee and stormwater maintenance agreements.
I thought there was some energy at the state level around relooking at this whole 3-acre debacle. Nothing happened? I mean,
We've heard rumblings, but I don't know of any progress.
How many homes in a development would qualify for a 3-acre site? I know it depends on different size
Yeah.
homes and length of driveways, but on average,
It's a good question. I know if I'm thinking about the residential developments in Williston, I would say 30 to 40 houses. But I'm sure that's maybe just an average. I don't have that exact number of households.
so would that be a incentive for developers to build smaller sites, smaller?
It's a good question. If they're building now, they would be held accountable to those, to the modern standards for stormwater permits anyway. These 3-acre sites are specifically sites that were built during a time frame where stormwater permits existed, but they weren't necessarily being maintained. And so the state is going back and trying to utilize those sort of abandoned stormwater systems, or maybe they were never built, and have them updated to meet the phosphorus reduction goals. So I don't know, I mean, I know at some of those sites, they're thinking about reducing their impervious by minimizing driveways or things like that if they're really close to that 3-acre mark. But I don't know if anybody's had success, or if, I don't know what current developers are doing, since they're in a slightly different situation where they're creating new impervious and are always going to be held to the modern standards.
I think the standards have changed, because I know like the school's struggling with meeting these goals with the money they have. And they certainly had stormwater ponds and everything before. It's just that it's not meeting
Yeah.
the modern standards, I guess, so.
Yes. Yeah, I think, I know some standards came out in 2002, and I think a lot of the sites built before that weren't built to 2002 standards, so they're being expected to be brought up to those. And then they have more recent stormwater manuals from the state that newer developments might be held to. Any other questions? Okay, just a couple more slides. Going to give an overview of our ongoing grant work. We already, or some of us visited the Meadow Ridge site. That's one of the locations where we're using ARPA MS4 Community Formula Grant funds. The other is our Town Hall Field site, where we're designing another gravel wetland. And then we also have design plans for stormwater updates at Sunset Hill and Oak Hill, where there is sometimes flooding at an undersized culvert. Then this past year, we also used the Better Roads Grant to increase the size of a culvert on South Brownell. That culvert was undersized and had a pinched inlet, so it wasn't receiving a lot of water. So we upgraded that culvert and redid the ditch work on the inlet side of the road because it had been receiving a lot more water than it was supposed to. And then for the grant and aid, which we get annually, we used it this year on Butternut and Lincoln. We replaced a couple of culverts, did some ditch work, and redid the crown on the road and removed any greater berms so that the water can properly flow off the road into the ditches and not cause any erosion in the road. And then, oh, do you have another question?
No, I just, Butternut's, are you guaranteeing me the next 100-year storm, it won't wash out Butternut?
I wish.
Never guaranteed.
Exactly.
And then moving forward, we're going to, as I mentioned, increase street sweeping in the fall, and we are going to look at updating our ERU, which is our equivalent residential unit that our stormwater bills are based on. That's because there's been a lot of development, and we are supposed to periodically update that. So the average, basically the average size of a residence in Williston might have changed since the last time that was calculated. And through the UPWP grant with CCRPC, we're having CCTV work done, and we're going to get a report on the condition of a lot of our stormwater pipes so that we can prioritize the ones that might need our attention the most. Any other questions?
Keep them busy.
Oh, wait, Chapin?
Chapin Cantor resident. This was wonderful. And just a couple of additions. I'm unaware, I knew we stopped testing the Allen Brook water quality, and so we have a flow restoration plan from 2005, and I wondered if we have verified if we still need more restoration activities. And I can just say anecdotally, I went with help from staff from the Lake Champlain Basin Project staff, and measured macroinvertebrates in the brook this past spring with students from the Williston Central School, and there was a healthy supply of stoneflies, caddisflies, and mayflies, which is indicators of good water quality. Now that's in only one spot on the brook. We measured it near Old Stage Road. And so I just wonder if we shouldn't be verifying whether we've already met our requirements before we especially do something in the Town Hall Meadow, which has no channelized flow of water coming out of it, even during rainstorms. So it's to me of a questionable value. And finally, Oak Hill Road and the Thomas Chittenden Health Center and parts of Partridge Hill come storming down the side of Oak Hill. The slopes are steep, that's town road. And the Thomas Chittenden Health Center has a lot of impervious surface and didn't have stormwater infrastructure when it was built. And I just feel like we should be addressing that if we're wanting to do what's right for the brook. And so those are my 3 comments. Thank you.
Thank you. To address your first question, I think the short answer is no. I don't think we've tested the Allen Brook.
Allen Brook is a water of the state. It was being tested by the state of Vermont, not by the town of Williston. The projects that we are doing are based on our flow restoration plan and the phosphorus reduction plan. The phosphorus reduction plan is one that we have to meet, and we're not there yet. And that is what the Town Hall Fields project is going to help us meet. So we did look at it before as part of the flow restoration plan, but now it is being looked at as part of the phosphorus reduction plan, which we have to meet that goal. We're not there yet. As far as flow restoration and the bugs, it might be a legitimate question, but it's not testing that the town of Williston was doing. They're waters of the state, not waters of the town of Williston.
I thought you were, maybe I misheard you. I thought I understood on our field trip that you said that there's flow, like how much water comes through during a storm, and that's not really water quality. I mean, it is secondarily, but it's really just throughput. That's a big problem at Allen Brook, right? It just really floods. And then the phosphorus was the amount of phosphorus altogether the town contributes to the Winooski. So it's not like you don't test individual, if I understand right, you don't test individual culverts or streams or anything. It's some kind of I don't know how they test the phosphorus total.
Yeah, we definitely, for phosphorus and chloride and other impairments.
Mic turned off, I'm sorry, I'll let you tap the.
Yep. I think it's back on. Okay. For impairments for specific streams, they're basing it on segments. So I do think they're testing in multiple locations.
Okay.
That answers part of your question. And then, for flow reductions, I'm not sure how they,
The way flow phosphorus works is you get a high flow, so it takes all that sediment out of the side of the banks, which introduces more phosphorus into the road. So that's where the connection is between the two. So when they came out with the flow reduction plan, that was the first step to all the impaired waters, to try to get the waters back from being impaired. And then they came out with the TMDLs for Lake Champlain and the phosphorus in the lake, and said, this is how much this community has to get rid of, this is how much this community has to get rid of. We have to meet those requirements. Once again, as far as testing for the bugs and that kind of stuff, the state was doing that. Years ago, we were told we were close, but close doesn't mean we were out of it. The water's still considered impaired by the state of Vermont, and so until the state determines that it's not an impaired water anymore, there's nothing the town of Williston can do. It's a state water body, not the town of Williston's.
Yeah, and in terms of testing sampling the bugs and testing the water, I think they also do that on a rotating basis. They do different parts of the state every year, so I'm not sure when the last time was that they were in the Allenbrook.
If I could follow up, I would just recommend we ask the state to test and make sure that we need to do more. And that if we do more, and I do hope we do on Oak Hill, that we do Oak Hill and not the town fields, because I feel like the impact is much larger from phosphorus, and especially because that's a flood activity. The Town Hall Meadow absorbs a huge amount of water when there's a lot of rain. The Oak Hill Road does not. And there's a real TMDL, there's a real maximum flow issue with Oak Hill Road in my view. And I actually pointed this out to the first stormwater coordinator we ever had. We walked it together and so forth, and I don't know why the town has not looked at that. It's even eroded enough that the town had to go in and repair where the sewer is on this side of the interstate along Oak Hill. Thank you.
Do you want to respond, or should I just answer?
I've got nothing more to say about it
Okay.
right now.
Further questions or comments from, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to quickly say, we've done a lot of maintenance within the right-of-way of Oak Hill to reduce the speed of the stormwater flowing down the road. So things like adding stone within the stormwater ditch, but beyond that, at this point, we don't have land to do any more stormwater projects on Oak Hill.
Further questions or comments from the board? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation, and thanks for the field trip.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
So that would bring us to the interviews on for this evening. Rob, Patrick, and Laura Lee, are you able to come forward? Good evening.
Hello.
Thanks for coming, and thanks for your interest in volunteering. What I'd like to do is ask you to make a very brief presentation of who you are and why you want to serve on the board. Before that, though, there is a question that has fallen to me that, let me just get it out of the way. It's about conflict of interest. The question is this, it's twofold. It's possible that you might develop a conflict of interest with somebody or something that goes before the board, as with anybody serving the town. So the question is, what would you do to recognize a conflict of interest, and what would you do if you did recognize it? So, who wants to go first?
I got the microphone. Yeah. That's why he wanted me to sit in the middle. That's a great question. We'll caucus, really. Conflict is interesting when I think about what we're volunteering for. I serve on a panel, and the process is going to maybe change how that happens. So inherently, I think that if anybody's serving currently in the Community Justice Center doing panels, there's going to be a conflict of interest. Because, most of us don't like change. And things are going to change, and I think we've all resolved that. That's why we volunteered to be part of an advisory group to help through the process. So your question's a great one, but inherently, I could look at it, virtually everything we're going to talk about could be a conflict of interest, depending upon how I think about what the evolution's going to be. I guess if there's something that's bubbling up in me I would call it out myself and call it out to whatever the group is that's there.
Okay. Thanks. Let me switch it a little bit. What about if there's not just a difference of opinion, but like somebody is in front of the board and you have a personal relationship with them, or there's a financial relationship between you and somebody that's involved with the board or the government?
Well, I guess if I had one, I would call it out too. I mean, I don't know of any yet because I don't know the breadth and depth of what we're going to be doing, but.
In all the years I've asked this question, I don't think it's ever come up in reality for the last 18 years, so I can understand that you can't think about how it might come up. But anyway, but okay, so thank you.
I agree, and I think one of the things that, as I've been a volunteer, I've been on the executive board for 5 or 6 years now, I think we are really good at identifying what our boundaries are. We are really good at identifying when and how to engage in not only difficult conversations, but when to remove ourselves from those difficult conversations. We often have had situations at the CJC where people have recused themselves from panels. They have said, I know this person, I have a conflict of interest with this person. So I think we are really well versed in identifying those situations and really being able to say, you know, this is not appropriate for me to be a part of, or I'm just going to be really transparent with everyone. This is the situation. And there have been times where we put it out to the group and say, is this a conflict of interest? Should I recuse myself? Or do you all feel confident and trust in my ability to kind of stay objective in this situation? So I think we kind of do that now.
Lee.
So if we could go down the line.
Can't say that for every question.
If we could go down the line, if each of you, and I should have done this to begin with, but if you could each introduce yourselves, explain why you're interested in the panel and what you would bring to it.
Okay, my name's Rob Mahalik. Lived in Williston over 25 years, and I've already been involved with the Williston Community Justice Center for about a little over 2.5 years at a very fully engaged level. And I've seen the restorative justice process itself is an incredibly cost-effective community benefit, and it's a benefit to the individuals who go through the program. It really creates repair over punishment, and it's an incredible program. So why I want to continue this year in the advisory board is to make sure that the Williston Community Justice Center's operations continue to flow, but also to make sure that we represent Williston in this new Chittenden County model. So there'll be a consolidation, and there is a planning process that's going on, and there will be advisory input. As I understand the planning process, well, there's a steering committee that's already in place, but community advisory input will come probably from October through January, and then there'll be decisions made. But I want to make sure that Williston and the service towns of Heinsberg, Richmond, Bolton, Huntington, and St. George, as well as the Mount Mansfield Union and Champlain Valley Union school systems, are represented well in the planning process from here until June 30th, as we start the new Chittenden County model on July 1st of 2026. So I think it's a great program, and I think we need to have a strong Williston voice and advocacy in that process as well.
Patrick?
What Rob said. My name is Pat Brown. I've lived in Williston about 30 years. Worked at UVM for 39. If you count my overtime, probably 45 years, so it's hard to sort of figure that out sometimes. And when I retired, my purpose was to repurpose myself. So I did a couple things. For the first 3 years of the Catamount Forest Committee, I was on that, gave some folks some other opportunities to do that, but I also got connected to the Community Justice Center. And the stuff that Rob talked about so eloquently, far beyond my ability to promulgate words, how about that? Yeah. You know, my interest in the advisory committee is to do whatever we can to really assess the transition to this new model. From what I know, which is limited, every community justice center operates a little bit differently. And we're asking like 4 or 5 different programs that have history, that have traditions, that have the ways they do their business to come together and create a new model. And so I want to make sure that Williston is served well. I want to make sure that the interest of the folks who are responsible parties who come to see us. I was over at a panel just earlier here this evening, and you know, it's a very incredibly great program, and trying to address behaviors that sometimes push the limits of our acceptability. So my interest is in making sure that whatever comes forward is really going to serve Williston in the best possible way. And there's some nuances that I think I'm learning more about, that it's like, well, let's talk about that. So that's part of where I'm doing it.
Thank you. I would ditto what both of them said, and I think in addition to all of that, oh, sorry. Thank you. I am Laura Lee Keach. I live in Jericho and came to the Williston CJC via the Justice Center's MOU with Mount Mansfield Union High School. So technically, Jericho is a service area. And initially started as the youth board leader and joined the executive board through that role. And as that part of the CJC kind of dissipated, stayed on the e-board and really have been a really involved volunteer since then. So maybe 5 or 6 years now. I am a board certified behavior analyst for South Burlington School District. Have been there about 12 years and was at Howard Center prior to that. And was one of the reasons why the youth board really spoke to me, and one of the reasons why I got involved at that level at the time. So again, I would second everything Pat and Rob said, as well as I have seen people come into the space at the CJC terrified, shamed, feeling so humiliated, and have left feeling safe and heard and connected in a way that they share with us they have not felt before. And so in the midst of these expectations of accountability, responsibility, a lot of hard work that these people do, and so much vulnerability, they still find those other wonderful things in that space, and that's because of the work of the people who are at the CJC. And to me, it's so important that we do what we can to maintain the spirit that has been created in that space, that we maintain the ability for people to still feel that and experience that when they come into that space and when they interact with us. So I think it's important that we have people who have experienced that, who have supported and helped create those spaces, so that we can make sure that we don't lose it as we are moving forward in whatever iteration we are moving towards. So yes, the logistics are all really important, but I think there's that kind of emotional piece as well. And that's something that is really unique to the CJC, that we provide this community. And people really leave there changed. And we know that for a fact. People have shared that with us. So I think that's important.
Thank you.
I would think it would be hard to be on a panel to change something that you're in love with to something else. And I am hearing from each of you saying, like, well, I know this is what I value. Do you each feel that you'll be able to flex and give things up in order to maintain those things you really value? I mean, are you going to, we don't want to put somebody on this committee that's going to be a roadblock to making this happen. Something has to happen. We just want, it seems like we're all on the page. We want we want it to happen without losing what we value, but have you thought about that seriously? Do you think you're all comfortable with that?
No, it's gonna turn.
We're gonna turn it this way.
Okay, who hasn't gone first yet?
You know, one of the principles of the whole restorative justice program is that it's community-based. So it's basically the community working with members of the community to create repair. So one of the biggest concerns when you move to a centralized model, a county model, is how does that community-based work, how is that affected? And that's why, you know, with the three of us here, we're really interested in advising the steering committee that's planning how the new Chittenden County model is going to work. What we understand, and again, these decisions haven't been made, but what we understand is that the Williston Community Justice Center will still continue to do what is called pretrial, but those are the restorative justice panels, creating contracts of repair. So we just want to make sure that that continues to happen because, again, we're members of the community, and the volunteers that are on the panels, you know, are volunteers mostly from Williston, but also Heinsberg and Richmond, you know, the service towns. And to us, that's the power of the restorative justice program, is that community-based engagement and the connective tissue that happens there. So in terms of change, just this is my opinion, the decisions are already made at the state level in terms of the funding and the model. That we can't change any of that. And we did provide input on behalf of Williston during that process in the last legislative session. But the model is the model. And so now what we want to make sure is that we advocate that Williston is served well. And if we continue to serve the other service towns that, you know, if we grandfather that in, that we serve those towns the way we have been serving them to this point.
What Rob said. For me, I think the base or the core of what we do isn't probably going to change. I think all the stuff around it might or look different. I won't say it's going to change. It's going to look different. One question is currently the recruitment process of getting volunteers is basically housed here. So we're recruiting people from Williston to serve on Williston Community Justice Center panels. We're doing training here. It's all sort of centralized. It's here. A question that I've asked, I don't have an answer yet because I don't know if there is an answer. So is recruitment for volunteers going to be housed in the central office, so to speak, as it's developed? I have no idea. If that happens, how do we then take that reality and have some kind of Williston base? So for me, I think that the changes are sort of floating around out there. Training of volunteers. I have no clue what Burlington does for training for volunteers. I did all my training on Zoom during COVID. So, you know, there's sort of, are we going to train volunteers all together as a countywide operation or in the more satellite operations as they're defined? What does that training look like? So there's multiple levels of, I think, for me, operational things that could be decentralized to help serve Williston, or it could be centralized. And if the decision is that those should be centralized, that's, for me, the decision. I'm still going to be a volunteer and work on the panels and do what I can, you know, to serve Williston and serve the people who've been harmed and those people who have been the responsible parties. But the program will still be here, and the essence of what's there, from my perspective, will still be happening.
I agree. And I think that I see our charge, again, there's so much still to be determined. We were just meeting last night and we're saying, for a different purpose, and we're saying how many questions we still have. Like, there's so much we don't know. So I don't know that I'm not, I think, even thought about that concept, because I'm like, there really isn't a place, I think, for inflexibility. I think, to me, this board, or this advisory board, is about taking or bringing to the table our experiences, bringing to the table our knowledge, and what do we know has worked well. We might even say, like, you know what, like, this didn't work great, and we really would love to see, like, these changes. And, oh, that's a wonderful idea. So if anything, I feel like this is an opportunity for us to be really open-minded, be a part of creating something that could be better at the county level, while maintaining what we feel like is really special and important about this community justice center. And I think this is an opportunity to take all of the passion that we have and share it with the steering committee and share it with those who are going to be a part of creating it versus, I think, kind of rooting against it. Or
One more thing I think it's important for the select board to consider. The Williston Community Justice Center did a lot more than restorative justice panels. We were often involved in human mental health crises, people who were suffering from addictions that needed a place to go to be safe, to be heard, people who are without shelter, people without food, people without clothing, who are cold. We probably at some times were involved in certain circumstances that may have been well beyond the mission of a community justice center, but in the terms of community justice, it served a lot more. So the thing that I think we need to, as a town and as a select board, as leadership, consider what gaps are created now that the Community Justice Center will only do the restorative justice program and not be a component of the human needs services that it was providing and is no longer providing. And certainly, I think in the conversations with law enforcement and the other community justice centers, the food shelf, and other places that we often see this human need, the services that we need. I know the town is contracted for some social service, embedded with the police department, which is great. That's what we need. We actually need a lot more of that. We probably need 3 to 4 times the amount that we've been able to, contract for. So it's just, we have a little time to think about this and really take a look at what gaps are created, how can we bridge those gaps, and how can we even help in providing either input from our lived experience in the Community Justice Center that might help the town with those gaps.
Just for your knowledge, we did in our FY '26 budget approve a full-time social worker who will be embedded with our police department in addition to the contracted work we're doing with Howard Center.
Yes,
So,
no,
yeah.
and that's what I meant.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
which is great. We love that.
Other questions?
Not for me.
If not, the number of applicants is
Equal to the number of openings?
equal to the number of openings. So if somebody wants to make a motion, there might be an obvious one to make.
Move to appoint Rob Mahalik, Patrick Brown, and Laura Lee Keach, it's Keach, right? Keach, to the Williston Community Justice Center Advisory Board for an unexpired 1-year terms through June 30th, 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no opposed. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
very
very
much.
much.
For your
Thank you.
long volunteer work and your continued volunteer work.
I believe, Williston and its surrounding towns are well represented by the board. Thank you. I think you'll be leaders into the new system.
So next up, the Commerce Street Superfund Site Project Update. Aaron, if I could ask you to introduce that. This is the mystery state employee that was going to present. Oh, yeah. I say that because I don't remember your name. Actually, can you hit that button so that, yeah, that's it.
Here we go.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, Kimberly. Thank you. But Aaron, could you do it? Bit of an
If you join the Zoom link, I can make you a presenter, but if not, I'm prepared to drive for you.
Okay.
Would that work? Okay. And I'll introduce this. So the project work has continued this year on the Commerce Street Superfund site cleanup. And DEC Environmental Analyst Kim Caldwell will provide a project update presentation, and it was also included in your agenda materials. So I just have to figure out how to share this.
While we're waiting, I was very excited about that 30-foot deep trench thing that we were supposed to get that never came through.
Yeah, it would have been very exciting, but I think we're also all relieved that we were able to switch gears and come up with a different design that meets our objectives and is a little more friendly to the neighbors and
That's true.
a little easier to implement probably. But yeah, so I'm not sure like how familiar all of you are with the site, so I wanted to be here tonight to provide some background, kind of an abbreviated version of the public meeting we had earlier this year, and just provide some background and context for the groundwater ordinance that you'll be looking at. And so I wanted to provide an update on where things are as we've been working the last year and a half. Yeah, go ahead. So if you're not familiar with the site is essentially 70 acres of contaminated groundwater. It was released from a property at 96 Commerce Street, a facility called MyTech. They did electroplating and used an industrial solvent, in this case trichloroethylene or TCE is the primary contaminant at the site. We also see some areas with cis-dichloroethylene, which is a daughter product of that solvent. And this issue was first discovered in the early 80s. It was reported to the state, I think, by a former employee of MyTech that kind of indicated there were some issues with disposal at the facility. They had an unlined lagoon behind the building that was excavated in 2017 by EPA. And then now we're at the point where we're cleaning up the groundwater. So there were many years of investigating, trying to get a handle on the problem, and eventually the site became listed as a national priorities list site or a Superfund site. And so EPA became involved, and it was in 2015 that there was a record of decision for cleaning up the site with in situ remediation. And it was pretty vague on what that would look like, but we knew there would be something occurring to treat the groundwater underground. And so when I started with the state around 2016 and a few years beyond that, there was a lot more testing to design a remedy, do pilot studies, and we came up with a design in 2019, and that did include a trenching machine at that time. Several years later, in 2023, we actually got the money to do that cleanup, and so there's kind of a gap in time there. Things change in terms of costs, and also just being out there and collecting more data, we shifted our design a little bit to be what it is today.
Those little green lines on this thing here.
Yeah, so the figure is not showing the entire plume. It's showing everything that's above 500 parts per billion or micrograms per liter. But our groundwater standard is 5 parts per billion, so everything that's 100 times greater than the groundwater standard. And the lines are just showing our treatment areas, so we're really targeting the most contaminated areas of the site. And then everything kind of outward from there will just kind of be monitored. Yeah, go ahead there. I'll get into more figures in more detail. So in terms of the remedy, it included the component that is actually treating the groundwater, but there's also institutional controls required to make sure that people are not having any access to the groundwater, not drilling any wells. And so the Department of Environmental Conservation and in the Agency of Natural Resources, we did a groundwater reclassification. So this is class 4 groundwater now in this area. The plume itself out to that groundwater standards is shown in the green, and then all of the properties that are in purple, kind of showing a buffer around that plume, are what is reclassified. And so we put a 200-foot buffer on the plume, and then any property touching that buffer was essentially included in that remedy. And I understand that area will be mirrored in the municipal ordinance that's proposed. So that was done in 2022. And the next slide is just showing that if you go on the A&R Atlas, you can see those boundaries if you pull up the groundwater classification layer. So it's a way for the community to look at that. In terms of the remedy, I said we're putting things in the ground that will actually treat the contamination and turn it into something that's non-toxic. So we're putting something in to basically create these barriers. We're using a soy-based vegetable oil, and we're also adding bacteria. And so as groundwater moves through those areas where we have all of these injection wells, it'll be cleaned up, and everything that's in the groundwater will be turned into these non-toxic byproducts, carbon dioxide, ethene, chloride. And so how we're doing that is through all the installation of many, many injection wells that are closely spaced. On here, they're shown as the black dotted lines. And so every 13 feet, there's a well that's been installed. And we still have some drilling to do this winter, but like I said, we're targeting everything that's above the 1,000 parts per billion. TCE, in some areas, it's above 500 parts per billion. And then we're really monitoring everything outward from there. And we have monitoring wells, up gradient and down gradient of those treatment barrier lines. So what this actually looks like in the field, I brought some pictures from this season of work. We are taking water from a hydrant on Kirby Lane right now. This is one of our staging areas on Commerce Street. We have tanks where the water goes in, we dechlorinate it, then we mix it with baking soda. So that's just a pallet of baking soda to raise the pH of the water. And then it goes through hoses distributed throughout the site. And then the other tank on the right is that vegetable oil, soy. It's called lact oil. It's a soy-based oil. And that gets injected into the green hose. So 3% per volume of all the water that's going into the ground has that oil mixed in. And then the next slide, you can see the wells. So there's like actually a little site tube, kind of transparent. You can see the liquid going down into the wells. And then there's the thing on the ground shows all the pressure gauges and flow meters so we can monitor what's happening. There's typically, I think, six wells hooked up to one of those manifolds. And over the past few weeks, we've had 42 wells being injected at one time between Commerce Street all the way over to South Brownell Road. And that includes this little road that goes through the woods, which just already happened to be there. We got lucky and put in wells right through there. So eventually, once we're done injecting, those pipes will all be cut down flush to the ground surface and capped with a road box. And we intend to use them in the future for more injections down the road as we need to replenish what's in the ground and make sure the conditions remain good for the bacteria to keep treating the groundwater. So once this is all done, we will continue to monitor the groundwater probably on a quarterly basis for a year, and then it'll decrease as we see fit, and then we'll just be monitoring things on an annual basis. But like I said, we do intend to come back and inject. Right now, we're estimating, probably 5 years and then 10 years down the road, but that is subject to change based on what we're seeing, and also there's kind of funding and milestone timeframes that play into that with EPA. So we'll keep the community updated as we keep monitoring things and know when we have to go back out. And it's possible we could be reducing the areas that we're injecting. So just to show you where things are now, like I said, we've been just the past few weeks working on that really long line in the yellow between Commerce Street and South Brownell Road. And then next we'll be moving over to South Brownell Road. And so the goal this year is to get everything that's in yellow done. We did the green areas in the hotspot last fall. So we had, some lessons learned from that, saw, good success and made some tweaks with our methods of operations. But, everything west of Commerce Street will be done this season. And then we'll continue finishing up some drilling on the east side of Commerce Street this winter and perform all the injections that are in the blue areas this spring. And then follow it up with just site restoration, any areas that need to be cleaned up and reseeded, and then continue with the groundwater monitoring. So that's really where things are today. And I'm happy to answer questions about the work or context for the ordinance.
I'm grateful something like this is being taken care of. This is a 15-year project.
It's been a long time, and we were very excited when the funding came to us. So,
How is this funded?
this is all funded from EPA through the bill funding, the bipartisan infrastructure law funding from the Biden administration that we got two years ago.
Reading up on it, it looks like the EPA just officially banned this in the last year or two.
Trichloroethylene.
Trichloroethylene.
Yeah, I don't know all the details of that, but it's definitely like more of a phasing out over time. It doesn't take effect immediately, but, and I think there are some exceptions to that still, but it is a little bit of a phasing out, especially for dry cleaners.
Pretty scary looking at some of the commercial and consumer uses over the years.
So, given that federal funding from the EPA is what's making this project possible, and that this is still a very long-term, many years, decades-long project, and federal funding is being cut continuously, is there any concern that this project will not continue to be funded, or is the funding already in place for the next few phases?
We've budgeted for the future injections with EPA, and it's always a little bit of a waiting game with Superfund sites, like prioritizing sites that are ready to go for cleanup. I think we were lucky with this funding that there was actually not a cost share to the state for this particular funding, so that benefited us, and they did that because a lot of states were given all this funding unexpectedly, and maybe some weren't ready for it. So, we do expect, this to continue to be funded, and potentially would have that 10% cost share on some of the future work. And then eventually the state takes ownership. Once we're 10 years beyond the construction of the remedy, the state is handed the keys, and we do all the long-term monitoring with our funding. So we haven't seen any impacts at this point to our program, or rolling back of what's already been budgeted.
Good.
Other questions or comments?
I'm just a little bit stuck on the, I forget the units, but it was like, you said like 5 was parts per whatever is what you want, and 500 is what we have.
Yeah, so 5 parts per billion is the groundwater standard. We're treating everything that's 500 and above, or 1,000 and above in some areas. I would say the highest concentrations on site are, in our hotspot, we say that's everything above 10,000 parts per billion.
So what happens in the spaces between 500 and 5. I mean, is there more groundwater that's questionable? Because it's over 5. It doesn't like drop off like a cliff, right? I mean, you're treating if it's above 500, but what if it's the next block over, it's 200? That's still,
Yeah, I mean, we're monitoring the entire plume and have restrictions on the entire plume out to that 5 parts per billion and beyond. But in terms of,
Treating,
what's feasible in terms
Yeah.
of funding and getting the most bang for your buck in terms of treatment, we're
Right.
really targeting those source areas where it'll continue to come out of these really high concentration areas. And so if you kind of manage those and cut off that source, eventually the plume will shrink and be more disconnected. We're really targeting an area that's very silty. There's a marine clay, generally about 40 feet down, and that's where most of the contamination is sitting on top of that clay. And so we're really trying to treat these really tight soils. And so you would see eventually, like, if we're able to kind of block that source, the sandier areas would kind of get cleaned up a little bit faster, and then you just have to worry about trying to keep the contamination from back diffusing out of the clay and really controlling those high contamination areas.
yeah, thanks.
No other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kim.
Thank you.
Kim's gonna stay hopefully,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
in case as I present the ordinance, if you have any really technical, and don't ask me to pronounce any of the chemicals, any of that. So, yeah.
So that does bring us then to groundwater ordinance, first reading of a proposed ordinance.
Okay. So the proposed ordinance is really to complement the work that Kim described. It's presented, for your consideration to prohibit the installation of, use of groundwater wells within the Class 4 groundwater area associated with the Superfund site. Kim already explained the next piece of that. The ordinance is also intended to ensure compliance with the state's reclassification order, prevent potential human exposure, and provide a local institutional control that supports the ongoing cleanup. So some key provisions that the ordinance has outlined is that there would be no new potable, or is it potable or potable?
I say potable.
Okay, I'm gonna go with
It's
it.
debatable amongst people.
No new potable or non-potable wells may be installed within the designated Class 4 groundwater area. There is one existing tested well that's exempt in the Superfund site, and it will be exempt so long as it remains uncontaminated. And we have really specific language to that site within the ordinance, or to that specific well. All new development and additional water demands in the area must connect to the municipal water. And then violations are subject to any civil fines and enforcement by the town. So we have some enforcement ability within the ordinance. I drafted the ordinance, but it was heavily reviewed by our town attorney, DEC staff, and also by EPA counsel. So I feel it's a pretty tight draft ordinance. And this is your first reading. Welcome feedback or questions that you have. And I'll open it for questions if you have any.
Questions from the board?
This is scary stuff, and so I totally understand why you'd want to leave it in the ground and not pull it out. But I was just curious why, I mean, if someone wanted to use it for cooling of equipment or something that was not drinking water, is there a, why do we say potable and non-potable?
Yeah, we debated this a little bit, but really, I mean, we don't want it withdrawn from the ground. We don't want we don't want new wells opening up pathways for contamination. We don't want it discharged somewhere, even if it's not being used for drinking. There's issues potentially if it's near buildings. It could cause vapor issues in buildings, and just the exposure to it, and any vapors coming off of the groundwater is hazardous, aside from drinking it. And so we're lucky that the state of the site now, there are not any known vapor intrusion issues, and because of the depth of the contamination, and we know where it is, and so we just don't want those conditions to change, or someone using it for a garden or an industrial use where it'll be discharged and then create a shallow plume that causes issues. So we would rather, if everyone is able, and it sounds like they are, to connect to municipal sources, we would rather that be the case.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Other questions?
I trust you all as the authority on this, and, you know, this is in the interest of keeping everybody and everything safe, so, yeah.
There is a proposed motion to get a public hearing going on this.
I move to warn a public hearing on the Class 4 groundwater use ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. The motion carries.
Ted, I probably should have interrupted you before, but I think we have to warn the date as well if you're
Oh.
warning the public hearing. So
Okay.
thankfully Eric set me up very nicely, and he timed it out that if October 21st at 7:05 works for you, that would be a good time to warn it
If
for.
that's when we have a select board meeting. then
Yes.
Yeah.
10:21 at 7:05.
Yes, let me double check just in case. Yep, October 21st.
I further move to warn the public hearing on October 21st at 7:05 PM.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays.
Excellent.
The amended
You
motion
can.
carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank you, Erin, for providing pictures so we don't have to have a field trip to the toxic waste dump.
Kim gets all the credit.
So that brings us up to Verizon wireless antenna proposed at the police station. Erin, if you could do a brief introduction.
Sure. So as you know, the police station roof is being considered as a potential location for a Verizon wireless repeater antenna to improve the much-needed cell coverage within the village. An overview of the proposed site plan and a third-party radio frequency report assessing federal safety compliance were shared at the July meetings. July meetings, yeah, both of them. And to follow up on the July discussions, we have Williston resident Stephen Shepard, who has decades of telecommunications experience, here to provide a presentation on wireless technology, specifically catered for the select board.
Great. Steve? Good evening.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Stephen.
I'll let you drive.
Okay, I'm prepared to do that.
It's sitting at the remote control, sitting in my truck where it cannot be a remote control. So.
Okay. Here.
From there. So my goal here this evening, just so that you know, is to dispel some of the myths and legends associated with mobile technology, wireless technology, cell phones, call it what you will. It is not in any way to take a side one way or the other in terms of the technologies and so on. I really want to just give you an overview of how the technology actually works so that you can assess yourselves what you're looking at, what you want to do, and so on. Safety is clearly the number one consideration. We know that, and I would never, ever say anything from that. So I'll leave the technical details to my colleagues from Verizon, but I will just give you a quick and dirty kind of an overview here, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. Everything you see in the photograph that's on the initial slide here, each one of those is in fact a cell tower. And I think the one that I remember the best was in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I was working with a client down there, and they took me out to show me this gigantic saguaro cactus. It was about 45 feet tall. And of course, they don't ever go higher than about 25 feet. The residents' response was basically, boy, those things grow fast, right? I mean, it was enormous, but it matched, it worked, it fit in. So let's go on to the next slide and talk a little bit here about qualifications. I have them. I've been in this telecom industry for about 45 years, written lots of books about it. I've installed, designed, maintained, and fought over cellular systems all over the world for years. So and I can still operate a rotary phone. So I'm reasonably qualified to do that. Okay, let's forget all that and move on if we could, please. So there are kind of two types of radio that led up to what we know today as modern mobile telephony. Way back in the 40s, Motorola came out with the sort of push-to-talk radio model that was seen on television in the calling all cars kind of a model. What they essentially did was put a very powerful radio on top of a very tall building in big cities. Detroit was the first one in the United States that got this. And the idea was that if you put a powerful enough radio up on top of a building, you can blanket a city with radio waves and hit all the police cars and fire department vehicles and so on. The problem is high power radio, number one. Number two, single point of failure, one radio. And number three, the potential danger, which they didn't worry too much about back in the 40s, but the potential danger of radio frequency energy pumping into the streets. And then, of course, you had the problem of blockage. You're in these big concrete canyons, and there's no telling whether or not you're going to actually get a signal as you're driving around in the city. You might be interested to know, just a quick little aside so that you can maybe win a bet in a bar. The technology that we have today, that's modern cellular technology, was fundamentally designed and built by Bell Laboratories. That was kind of an original thing. The first cellular networks actually came out, believe it or not, in 1947. They weren't commercially deployed, but that's when the technology emerged. The technology that allows us to pack lots and lots of people into a small amount of radio frequency space, a small amount of bandwidth, if you will. It's kind of an interesting person. Click for me. This is the engineer that actually designed the cellular and holds the patent for the cellular technology that we have today. Hedy Lamarr, the famous actor, was in fact an electrical engineer, and she, together with the next click, if you would, a guy named George Antheil, were the people that actually designed the code division of multiple access technology that makes modern cellular networks, at least a lot of our networks here in the States, actually work properly. So go away and win bets with that. Okay, let's move on if we could. So when we talk about 5G, the G in 5G stands for generation, and it simply means the current technical generation of radio that we're using in terms of what we've deployed. And if you look at what I've got up here on the screen, you'll see that we've gone from first generation wireless all the way down to what is now being deployed in a couple of forms as fifth generation wireless. So 1G, or first generation, was just analog radio. This is where we started to see the emergence of that wonderful phrase that everybody remembers, I'm going to lose you, right? You went into a tunnel, you went into a forest that had waxy leaves, you went around a corner, you're going to lose the person, just happened to be the characteristic weakness of the technology. When second generation came along, we added the ability to text, but it was texting where each button had 3 letters associated with it. You may remember it took 27 minutes to say hello because you had to hit the button so many times. Then we had kind of an interim technology called 2.5G. And with 2.5G, what we started to see was, first of all, the first digital technology, which added a lot of advantages that I won't go into, but it made it much better. And it added mobile internet capability. So suddenly we're starting to see the integration with the internet so you can actually get connected to online services. And that was when the internet went from being this sort of academic college or university-oriented experimental network to something that was becoming more mainstream, recognized by the need to connect it to the cellular world. When third generation came along, this is where we really started to see a big shift. With third generation, what we saw was, first of all, the arrival of broadband, meaning high-speed data or higher speed data, available to a roaming device that had never been available before. And that was a really big deal because people were starting to clamor for the services that they enjoyed on their computers being available on their mobile devices. We also saw the first smartphones emerge with 3G. With fourth generation wireless, sometimes called LTE, what we saw was the first really high-speed networks where we actually had the ability to connect at speeds that were similar to Wi-Fi. If you got in a good place and you were reasonably close to a network connection, you could get Wi-Fi speeds up around 50 megabits per second. That's a huge bandwidth chunk going to your phone. It was also the first time we saw the introduction of the Internet Protocol, IP, which was the protocol that makes the internet work, But by introducing it into the cellular world, it allowed us to seamlessly integrate mobile technology with fixed technology. Now, just a little bit of terminology here. 4G was fourth generation wireless. It was what I just described. In between the move from 3G to 4G, as we were slowly retrofitting the network, which is a very complicated, very expensive process, we had kind of an interim solution that was almost a subset of 4G called LTE, which stands for long-term evolution. And it simply means we're on our way to 4G. So we're going to give you some of it. We're just not quite to the point where we have all of it. Okay? Today we've got 5G. 5G is a pretty exciting technological innovation. It comes in a couple of flavors. I'll talk about them briefly in a second. Really what matters here is that it gave you enhanced mobility, so a broader ability to reach remote areas, number one. Number two, much better service, better antennas, better radios, a whole bunch of things. And the ability to support specific industries with mobile technology like robotics, for example, that's becoming very important today. The thing I want you to know more than anything from this slide is this. The cellular network, no matter which one we're talking about, is merely an extension of the wireline network, okay? These things do not work like walkie-talkies. If I'm walking around town and I want to talk, I want to call one of you, my phone doesn't talk to your phone. It must go through that antenna that you see on that slide up there. Those things up at the top of that antenna are the emitters and the collectors for the signal. Okay, that's really important. The only part of the mobile network, the wireless network that's wireless, is the connection between your phone and the nearest tower. That's really important. Now, to be fair, some of the towers are connected by microwave to another tower, another infrastructure, but the service part of it, this is the only part that's actually wireless. Okay, that's important. If you would, please. So, why is it called cellular? Okay, you remember those high-power radios that Motorola put together? This is very different. All cellular networks have 5 unique characteristics that make them work regardless of the underlying technology. Number one, they are low-power radios. They're low-power radios for a reason, the main one being cost. We're going to have to cover huge areas with this network, so we're going to build these little low-power cells, and we're going to squash them all together. They're always drawn like hexagons, but they're not actually shaped like that. In fact, those things at the top of the tower can be tuned to cover a wider or narrower area. If you're in a place like a narrow valley, they will actually be tuned so that they point in both directions, but they're very narrow because they're going up and down a narrow valley. If you're in a big, open, remote, rural area, like we have in some of our areas, they will actually provide vast high-power coverage over a large area because you've got a scattered population that needs to be connected. They're not in one single small area, okay? So low-power transmitters that cover a very small coverage area. Number two, frequency reuse. You see those multiple colored hexagons up there? The idea behind those colors is that every one that's yellow is using the same set of frequencies as all the other ones that are yellow. And all the red ones are using different frequencies, but they all use the same if they're all red, and so on. And the idea here is that we buy one piece of spectrum, and then we can use it in multiple places, and you don't stomp on each other. So you can provide a lot of coverage with a limited amount of spectrum, okay? The next thing that happens is that we have the ability to hand off, meaning that as you're driving down the road, what happens is that in addition to the cell tower, there is a little piece of technology called a mobile telephone switching office. Think of it as an orchestra director, okay? What they're doing is, if I'm driving this way and I'm connected to that tower over there, as I drive away from the tower, the signal strength drops rapidly as I move away from that tower, okay? I know it because my calls start to, and I start to get dropouts, okay? However, that orchestra director, this technological MITSO as we call it, is paying attention, and it sees that I am losing signal strength as I move away, but it also sees, because it's talking to all of these towers, that I'm getting stronger on that tower over there. Hey, do you have an available channel that I can hand off a call to you with? I do. Great. Handoff. Now, if you're lucky, you don't even know what happened. Sometimes it drops. But the point is that we have the ability to, as you move around from cell to cell to cell, you actually get handed, your call gets handed from cell to cell as you actually move. Centralized control I talked about already. And these are basically the key elements or the key functions that make these cellular networks operate. The last one I'll mention is that we have the ability to split cells. And what that means is that if you're in an area, imagine, for example, you live in a congested city, and there's a freeway off-ramp that you take to go home, and it always backs up. Well, you know what's going to happen. The minute people stop in their cars, they're going to pull out their phones to say, I'm stuck on the off-ramp, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Well, you're going to overload that tower that happens to be serving that particular geographical area pretty quickly. The engineers know that because the MITSO is reporting saying, I'm all out of channels here, I can't take any more calls. And what they will do is they will split the cell. And all that means is they put another one somewhere nearby. And what that does is it increases capacity, but the cool thing is that because of the geometry of the radio emissions, you don't double the capacity, you quadruple it. That's important, okay? Go on to the next one. Here's why it's important. Okay? We are rapidly moving away from a world where people have wired phones in their homes. I spent my career in telecom, and with several tears in my eyes, I disconnected mine recently because the only call I ever got was a monthly call from the pharmacy telling me to go fill my prescription. It's silly, so I got rid of it. This is now our phone, like so many people, okay? But I want you to look at these numbers for a second. In 2024, total mobile data globally, okay, this is all of the data generated over mobile phones. So it's streaming music, it's emails, it's anything that can be converted into zeros and ones, was 147 zettabytes. That's 147 followed by 21 zeros. That's a lot of data. But let me tell you why that number matters. Today we generate a lot of that data from applications that are increasingly becoming mobile applications. So dispatch services, public safety applications, business, Zoom calls, all the things that we do in business becomes very, very, very important. I want you to note that from the beginning of human history, which was 500,000 years ago, until 2012, I believe it is, until 2012, we generated 9 exabytes of data. That's a 9 with 18 zeros after it. Okay? Over 500,000 years. Today we generate that every 6 minutes. The data growth is incalculably big. And it's becoming so central to our lives that we absolutely need this. We've got things like the Internet of Things. What that means is that any device that can talk to a network, usually wirelessly, is considered to be a thing. If you've got an Alexa device in your home, if you've got a smart thermostat, if you've got a mobile phone, increasingly I'm starting to see when I travel road workers that are wearing Internet of Things vests that have LEDs in the back that can light up saying slow down, or they can light up saying road crew ahead. I mean, and it's all controlled by a remote service that can make this happen. I just did a quick look at my own house before I came over here. I've got 38 things connected to my Wi-Fi connection at home. And I'm not a super user by any stretch of the imagination, but that gives you a sense of the number of devices generating this data that people come to depend on. So all these applications that I've got up here, these are all contributing to that. But the one I want you to pay close attention to, and this is not an argument to put the tower up there, it's an argument to make sure that we've got adequate coverage in Williston, is that if I don't have a home phone, meaning a wired phone, then I can't call 911. I can't call the fire department. I can't call an ambulance. I can't call for help. I can't do work at home. I can't do the things that are so critical. This is becoming the way people communicate. So it's important to take that into account as we make whatever plans they are that we end up doing here in Williston. The fact that we've got significant dead zones, that's not acceptable. And I'm not saying that as a telecom professional. I'm saying that because it's a pain to go through town in a place as modern as Williston and not be able to get connected. That's especially, I mean, I'm right here at Town Hall. That's problematic. Okay, if you would. So just to wrap this up, to talk about 5G for a second, because this is one of the areas where we have significant myth and legend, what you will hear as you read about 5th generation wireless is that if you get 5G, you're going to get anywhere from 1 to 10 billion bits per second going to your phone. You're going to get massive coverage. You can do pretty much anything you want with it. Absolutely true and absolutely false. And the reason for that dichotomy is that there are two flavors of 5G. There is the sort of what I like to call the consumer 5G, which is the one that we're worried about. And then there is sort of the industrial 5G. And there are those two frequency bands that you see up there. Don't worry about the numbers. Worry about the stuff down below. So when we look at the 5G that is going to be deployed in Williston and that is being deployed in most communities around the country, we're talking about the lower frequency stuff, the stuff that's in the 450 megahertz to 6 gigahertz range or so. And by the way, 6 gigahertz is where Wi-Fi operates. So there's kind of an interesting little linkage there. So when you have those lower frequencies, you can get higher distances, greater distances, because lower frequencies travel farther. They don't decay as fast as high frequencies. And you get lower bandwidth. Now, lower band, it's all relative. You still get significant bandwidth. On the higher frequency stuff, which is what we're seeing deployed in places like shopping centers, stadiums, business parks, college campuses, that's where you get the extremely high speeds. Just one problem. The problem is, number one, the radios have to be much closer together because they don't travel very far. When they're looking at cities that are deploying this very high-speed 5G, they're putting radios literally on every corner of the neighborhood because it just doesn't provide the distance that you get. But you get enormous bandwidth. So as long as you can control where the people are, stadium, shopping center, college campus, you can provide a gigabit of service. You're not going to do that with the 5G that we're going to get. You're going to get great service. But don't confuse those two, because a lot of people do. And I want you to understand they're two very different services. If I'm running a factory, we've got 200 robots that need to be connected and perfectly timed, then that high frequency stuff is very important to me. And that's not what we're going to be concerned about. Maybe someday in the future, but not right now. Okay? Okay. Let's get into the safety conversation. I've got 2 slides and I'll be done. In the world of physics, there is something called the inverse square law, and all it says is that a radio signal, the strength of a radio signal, decreases as a function of the square of the distance from the transmitter. Now, let me tell you what that means in English. If I've got a radio transmitter, a cell tower, whatever it may be, it doesn't matter, and if I'm standing 25 feet from that tower and the power is 25 watts, which is a pretty reasonable number to consider for a cell tower, 50 feet away, it's going to be a quarter of that. It's going to be 6.25 watts. And when I'm 100 feet away, when I double the distance again, I'm down to 1.5 watts. So the distance drops off as a function, not in a linear way, but as a function of the square, the inverse square of the distance, okay? This becomes important when you start to think about how far away are people. So just to give you a sense of perspective, just so you have some numbers to think about, a typical Wi-Fi router that you're operating with in your office at home operates at around a watt up to about 4 watts. The cell phone that everybody walks around with glued to their head operates at up to a watt. Now, I say up to because typically it's lower than that, but here's the problem. If you're in an area where you've got weak signal, where you're not getting connected, the power of the phone will go up. It will try to transmit at a higher power, trying to find a radio that it can talk to, which means that that's going into your head. Okay? So the more we can provide good, solid coverage, that's one contributor to keeping the power that these things are emitting lower. Because not everybody's using earbuds. A lot of people are using the thing next to their head, okay? And by the way, further power, just to give you one more, your microwave oven at home, this is all microwave we're talking about, typically operates at around 1,700 watts. Now, these are all called non-ionizing energy, and what that means is that the type of energy they're emitting does not make changes to mitochondria, it doesn't affect DNA, it doesn't change anything inside your body. In fact, one of the challenges associated with the high-frequency 5G is that it bounces off of things like clothing, like tinted windows. So unless we're all going to walk around naked, we're going to have a problem getting that high-speed stuff that we're talking about. We're going to have to come up with a fix for that, okay? So there are all kinds of technical challenges here.
Yeah, where would you put your phone?
That's a great question. You have to wear it around your neck or something. Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. Okay, so to wrap this up, in terms of safety, I did an exhaustive search, okay? And I found all of the studies that everyone has seen that speak to concerns over, cancer risk and things associated with other physiological changes and so on. They're all out there. They're absolutely all out there. None of them are conclusive. So I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm simply saying we don't know. We don't know. Exhaustive studies have been done that look at huge populations in city areas and so on, where people are living close to these towers and so on. Have there been unusual cases? Of course, there absolutely have. Can we directly attribute them to the presence of a cell tower? We can't. These are studies that I've quoted from some pretty decent, organizations that are non-aligned, and their conclusion is we don't know. We don't think so. We can't find any direct link. I have all of these studies. I'm happy to share them with you if they'd be helpful to you. I looked at probably a couple of hundred of them, and I came away, I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I will tell you that there is no conclusive link between the two. Okay? So I'll shut up now. I live nearby. I'm happy to provide extra information if you need it, but that's all I've got. Happy to answer questions if I have time. Otherwise, I'll hang around if that's desirable.
Questions from the board?
I'm trying to figure out how to answer this one, because I just read some, but on a different topic, your concept of not provable. I think it had to do with, Europe tends to disallow chemicals in foods and things like that faster than the U.S. does because the U.S. wants provable. So when you say not conclusive, would you have a concern about living across the street from this?
I would not. And that's not because I spent 40 years in the telecom industry and lived under these towers for many, many years. It's because I know the science behind it. I know the physics behind it. I know that the inverse square law is real. I know that it's non-ionizing energy and that 1.5 watts at 100 feet is not going to create an issue. Now, will there be someone out there for whom it will create an issue, just like eating too much sugar? All these things come together. Somebody's going to be affected. That's just statistics, genetics, call it what you will. But looking at the larger picture, at the overall benefits, would I be concerned? I would not.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome.
good.
Real helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Good evening.
There, thank you very much. I'm Andrew Davis, Louis Hotchets.
Martin Levin.
And I think we've been here a couple of times and presented generally the proposal. If you want me to skip that and go to the more detailed information from Martin, we can do that. Or if you want, we can review again the proposal across the street for the site at the police station.
What I remember, correct me if people have different memories, was we had two specific questions. One was looking across the street, the impact, and then one was maybe what the second document here was, like, what's the coverage going to improve? Or forget how it was said, but the second one. Personally, I don't need to start all over again.
Yeah,
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
In that case, I'll turn this over to Martin. If you have any questions, we're all here as we go.
So PowerPoint, I can do the slideshow very well for Adobe, which is what I have. I'm not as sure where the tool is. Do you think you could find it really quick? Otherwise, I can just scroll through it like we're reading it.
You have it in Adobe?
Yeah.
Okay, and that works or doesn't?
I just can't do a slideshow view. I don't know. I can just scroll through it.
Control L?
Is that,
Control
oh,
screen?
see it? I figured you would know. Okay.
Should go full screen.
And we do all have it.
There we go. Okay, let me share first and then I'll do that handy shortcut. Thank you, I learned something.
Used to be F5.
Okay.
They had to change it.
Okay, now it's not working. Can try it.
Okay. Martin Levin, Senior RF Engineer, C-Squared Systems on behalf of Verizon. My rather more mundane presentation is, see, next page, we'll start with the overview, which will cover existing and proposed coverage, coverage from the alternate site, and then the RF exposure, an overview of the RF exposure report we prepared. Next slide, existing coverage. This shows the coverage in the area right now. Green is what we call optimal or in-building coverage. The yellow is minimal, acceptable coverage or in-vehicle coverage, and gray is strictly outdoor coverage. Excuse me, put these on if I expect to see anything. Okay, the Williston East site is shown on here at the roughly the center, and also shown as the other site that says Williston East is the alternate at the rest area out on I-89. And you can see there's a significant gap in coverage along Route 2 and the vicinity of the town offices, and in areas to the northeast. The gray, we've only got outdoor coverage, and there are also some areas of white coverage, which is below the outdoor level currently existing in the market. So there is definitely a coverage gap in that area that we've outlined with the oval. If we go to the next plot, we can see how the proposed coverage fills in the area. We have significant additions of in-building coverage where there was either in-vehicle or outdoor. In-vehicle where there was either outdoor or white, and even more outdoor coverage where there was simply white and no coverage available there. With a great emphasis on particularly around the naturally the area of the police department, and in the buildings there, of course, coverage will increase greatly, and that will help all the functions connect with each other, especially public safety, which is very reliant on cell phone coverage. Okay. That's our solution. The alternate was raised, was at the rest area. The height available and the location result in leaving a lot of in-vehicle or even outdoor coverage, where the proposed site will bring in building coverage and really doesn't do much of anything to the northwest on, if I can read, the areas going up Route 2A, or Mountain View, or yeah, those areas up there, and I thought I could read this, and it turns out I can't. Those areas that are still gray and still yellow or even still white, that site really doesn't, due to terrain and other issues, does not cover up into that area and really doesn't really benefit that area that the proposed site gets very much at all. So that's the synopsis of the alternate and versus the proposed site. Next slide is back to RF exposure. The FCC does set the rules for this. There are separate allowable levels for general public and occupational. General public is obviously for people who are simply going around, no idea if they're in an RF exposure area or not. So it's for continuous exposure at these levels, which are much lower than the occupational levels, which are for people who are aware that there are antennas in their area where they are working. They may even have RF monitors on to work in a somewhat higher percent MPE environment than the general public is exposed to. All the MPE calculations in the report and in here refer to the lower general public limits, so the strictest limits are the ones we used. And of course, we prepared a report that goes into much more detail than in this synopsis. MPE calculations are always based on worst-case assumptions. All transmitters are on at maximum power all the time, which cannot happen because they would be destroyed by the heat. There are no cable losses assumed, so none of the signals lost in cables, none of the signals lost in foliage on its way from the site to the user. We don't claim any in-vehicle losses or in-building losses. Those are not added in. This is just someone standing out there being directly exposed. And we have a perfect ground reflection, which results in 4 times the power, and that's an assumption that doesn't happen very often because the ground is not perfectly conductive and does not reflect perfectly. That 4 times increase would basically be as if the ground were metallic and perfect, like a mirror reflecting perfectly, and it most certainly is not.
So I think what you're telling us is that the calculations you're going to show are like in a perfect condition with nothing blocking.
In the perfect condition to be high exposure.
High, yeah.
Everything there, all 6 of those factors are actually much lower in, have much less effect in the actual measurements you might make somewhere, and invariably these things turn out to be much lower when you measure them.
Could I ask what MPE actually stands for?
Maximum permissible exposure.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, sorry. One of those things I probably should have defined. Per the IEEE, that's the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, and the American National Standards Institute, 95.1. This is where the standard started. There's a safety factor of 10 built into the higher occupational limits, and there's an additional factor of 5 built into those on top of those for the general public limits. So overall, there is a 50 times safety factor in the general public limits. The limits there are consistent with the limits developed by a oddly named international group, I think part of the UN, called ICNIRP,
I won't ask what that stands for.
International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection.
Show up.
Of course. What else could it be?
What else could it be? I was going to guess that.
Yes, the next page shows the limits. They're the table of occupational limits. We work on power density, which is the next to last column there, and it shows the averaging time. 6 minutes for occupational, 30 minutes for general population. We don't take any advantage in the calculations we have of any averaging time to average out inactive times in the transmission from the site. We assume it's on all the time. You could average it over 6 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 days. It would always be the same.
Would the roof of the police station be considered occupational?
It's not accessible. There's no door, there's no hatch, there's no way to get up there. But it was calculated in our report, and if you stand practically hugging the antennas, you will be over the general public limit. If there's any work to be done on the roof, it's coordinated with the operators. They either turn it down or turn it off at a specified time. Roof workers, cupola repairs go on. As soon as they're clear, the site comes back up.
Thank you.
The next page shows a graph of the FCC limits. They are different at different frequencies because the human body absorbs RF differently at different frequencies. When your body is roughly one wavelength of the signal, you absorb it very well. If you're standing by an AM station, when the wavelength is measured in hundreds of yards, you don't absorb that very well. So the limit is much higher. And back up to, from 300 megahertz up to 1500, which takes in most of the frequencies we use. It gradually increases and then levels off for the rest of the way because those high frequencies don't penetrate skin or anything else very well. Next page shows the MPE levels on the roof of the police department building. As you can see, there is some yellow, there is some dark blue up there, and if you were inside, I think you basically have to be inside the cupola with the antennas on, and then you would be over the limit. If you're working up there, you should certainly have an RF monitor that would tell you well ahead of time. The monitors basically are carefully designed not to scare the life out of you. They beep a little, they beep a lot, they beep more loudly as you get closer. It warns you as you get closer, so you don't get a sudden, OMG, run for your life signal.
Jump off the roof.
Every step of the way, you're getting more and more warning that something is up ahead that's going on that you probably should back off from. And that's only on the top of the roof there. You can see it's 0 to 5% on the lower roof. So really only if you're up on the cupola, which is probably about a 12-12 slope roof, which would be rather difficult to scale anyways, get yourself in the cupola, somehow figure out how to unlock it, get inside, well, okay, then you are in an area that would have excessive exposure. This shows calculated levels on the first floor, taking into account the losses based on the distance from the cupola to the first floor of the building and the losses through the materials in the floors. We see there are areas of 1 to 2% of the limit on the first floor, and that's only directly under the antennas. So there are very small areas of very low MPE on the first floor of the building. We looked at the second floor as well. There are also green areas, but they are light green, dark green, and they are in the same positions and slightly larger, but still the same, roughly the same percentage, very small. So if workers within the building and in the town hall annex and the town hall, in no case are you even at 1% of the limit. There we have a detailed list of the levels inside the town offices. There is one spot on the second floor directly below the sectors where you can go 10.3 or 15.7%. That's the one very specific spot, and again, there's probably a factor of 4 or 5 reduction in how the system will really work in terms of those absolute worst case assumptions just not being anything that will happen. You'll probably measure somewhere between 3 and 4% in that area, no more. And in the other areas, you wouldn't be able to tell whether the site was on or not in terms of RF exposure percentages. At the ground level, we show 0 to 5, 5 to 10, and greater than 10. There is no area greater than 5% anywhere at ground level. In the area we show surrounding there, that's all within the maximum percentages we would have shown in that diagram. General population, second floor, we show a small area of green, 5 to 10%, that is outside the building on the second floor, where there is no way really for anyone to be. So in that particular case, it's not something that's relevant. This shows the locations. In the report, 1 through 6 that we looked at based on some input from the public. Locations, yeah, that's in that particular, and the scale is there. In the nearby structures, the maximum calculated percent MPE is 3.2% at Associates in Orthodontics, 60 feet northeast of the office. And that is a second floor calculation. I'm not even sure offhand if Associates in Orthodontics has a second floor, but if they do, the calculated percent MPE there is 3.2%. The limit is 100%, so.
They do. Have a second.
And so, just to wrap it up, the proposed site remedies the coverage gap in the vicinity of the town offices and in areas to the northeast. The rest area ultimate site does not remedy the coverage gap in the vicinity of the town offices and areas to the northeast. The maximum MPE level in the town offices in any place anywhere anyone could ever be is 15.7% of the limit, and the maximum MPE in the nearby residences is 3.2% on the second floor of that one building at the Associates in Orthodontics.
Questions? Questions from the board?
That's awesome. Very clear.
Answers everything.
Yeah, yep.
I'm grateful that you picked an alternate site from the first site that you chose. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I guess to loop back, what we're here to request is request approval of the select board to permit the town manager and other personnel of the town to negotiate in good faith with Verizon Wireless towards a leasehold interest at the police station for the site. We're early in the process. There's quite a bit of due diligence to perform. So that would include providing a draft agreement for review by the town manager, town attorney. We also need to complete structural analysis, construction drawings, and dig more into the details. So what we're looking for is that approval from the select board such that we could move forward and the steps that would bring this towards a lease that could be reviewed and potentially signed.
Okay. Discussion? There's no formal motion, but what's the board's thoughts and pleasure?
Aaron, the police folks who work in the police department are still on board with this? We're not hearing that they're getting cold feet about it or anything, so.
The lieutenant who is right directly underneath where it would go is actually one of the biggest proponents.
Well, maybe we could move him in another office, but that's like.
Yeah.
I did talk to some town staff members today who, like, were telling me just, sometimes they struggle to get calls from their, children, or their children would be across the street at the school, and they cannot communicate because that's impossible. I spend a lot of my day over at the building across the street. I spend a lot of my day behind that building across the street, and it constantly concerns me. The number of potential situations that can arise, have arisen, and the lack of ability to communicate in a situation. And so I support moving ahead.
I think the more you become very accustomed to being able to rely on your phone. And so where we used to have a lot more landlines or something else, it would be that, or the walkie-talkies or whatever, especially at things like schools, they kind of fall out of favor because most of the time you don't need them. But if your cell phone doesn't work, that's a problem.
I feel it's unnecessary to require any more studies. I think we should take action tonight.
Yeah, I'm grateful for the information provided tonight by you and Steve, and I feel comfortable moving forward.
So, Aaron, it sounds like we have consensus that the select board would like the town manager to work to negotiate a lease with Verizon as the next step. Take all other appropriate steps.
So noted, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Time.
And thank you for your patience.
Do we
Yeah.
need to make a motion?
No.
No.
Or anything?
No.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Now I know Control Alt. That's amazing.
I did not know that either.
Yeah.
So that would bring us to manager's report. If there are other items.
All right, well, we did the bulk of it, so it'll be pretty brief. I did just want to remind everyone, if you hadn't seen it, it was in the Observer and elsewhere, that the library will be celebrating 120 years of service, Saturday from 1 to 3. And I bring it to your attention specifically because Director Unrath has let us know that I think, Mike, maybe you requested it, but they will be making an outline of the proposed expansion and where the parking area will be and where the performance area is suggested. So if you go visit, you can see what that might look like, space-wise at least. And it'll be labeled each section, so.
Thank you. And when is this, Saturday?
It's Saturday, yep, from 1 to 3.
1 to 3.
I think there'll be goodies too, I can't promise, but I'm pretty sure I
I
saw
think
that.
the town
somewhere.
band's playing, aren't they? Did I see that? Town
Yeah.
band's gonna be playing too. Yep. Mike, that was a good suggestion, thank you. Curious to see it staked out here.
It is also Spirit Day at CVU, unfortunately, so.
Oh, I think I got 1,500 Christmas trees to plant this week. I'm going to try to make it. I'm going to put it on my calendar.
All right. And then just real quick, a reminder for October 7th, you had agreed that it was okay to start early, so it'll be a 6:30 start time for an executive session. And then you saw probably in your materials that the finance report was provided. Shirley is in attendance online, so if you had any questions about that, I have given her audio access, so she is.
I have to say, I just didn't get a chance to look at it very closely, but I know where Shirley sits.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. That would bring us to other business. Is there any other business?
I'm going to try to get out of planting trees Saturday afternoon.
Hearing no other business, that would bring us to final thoughts on items from this meeting. Are there any final thoughts on items from this meeting? Okay, hearing none, then I will declare that we are adjourned. 9:15. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.